The stars stretched endlessly across the dark expanse as the warship cut silently through the void. The crew, hardened by years of conflict, carried the weight of uncertainty on their shoulders. Their orders were vague, cloaked in layers of military secrecy that had become all too familiar. Some whispered of new enemies, others of strange alliances. The mission details were unknown, but the tension in the ship's corridors was palpable. This wasn't a routine patrol. Everyone knew that much. Far from any known territory, the warship sensors flickered to life, detecting something massive in the distance. The crew scrambled to their stations, unsure of what they might be facing. On the main deck, seasoned officers studied the readings, faces drawn with concern. What appeared before them defied expectations. A colossal alien vessel, unlike anything they'd encountered. Its design was organic, almost as if it were a living entity, pulsating with energy that human technology could barely comprehend. There was no time to deliberate. Protocol dictated caution, but fear of the unknown mixed with the natural instinct to assert dominance. The humans attempted contact, their ship broadcasting signals in all known languages and codes. No response came, only the silent drift of the alien vessel in the dark. Then, without warning, the warship systems flared with alarms. Something was interfering with their communications, blocking outgoing messages and cutting them off from headquarters. They were isolated, stranded, facing the unknown without any guidance from command. Panic rippled through the crew, but the officers maintained order, issuing commands to prepare for engagement. Weapon systems powered up, shields raised. There was no room for hesitation. But before they could act, the alien ship responded in a way no one expected. A bright light enveloped the human vessel, scanning it, probing it as if it were dissecting the ship itself. Crew members felt a strange sensation, as if unseen eyes were watching them, reaching into their very minds. Then the first strike came. A beam of light, faster than anything the human warship had ever encountered, tore through their shields. The ship rocked violently as alarms screamed through every deck. Engineers rushed to contain the damage, but the blow had been precise, targeting critical systems. The warship's response was swift, firing a volley of missiles and energy blasts at the alien vessel, but it was like striking the air. The alien ship absorbed the assault, its outer layer shimmering with a strange, reflective quality that rendered human weapons almost useless. In the chaos, something unexpected happened. A lone crew member, a young officer with little combat experience, made a discovery while examining the alien scans. The enemy ship wasn't just blocking communication, it was trying to communicate. The patterns, initially mistaken for interference, were a form of language, complex, layered, and entirely foreign to human understanding. She rushed to the bridge, sharing her findings with the command staff. Debate broke out among the officers. Was this an enemy or something trying to make contact? The scars of previous wars ran deep, making the decision fraught with tension. A single mistake could lead to annihilation, but so could hesitating in the face of a potential threat. Ultimately, the captain, grizzled, weary from years of war, made the call. They would try to respond, not with weapons, but with a signal. The crew worked feverishly to decode the alien patterns, transmitting a response that mimicked the ship's energy signatures. There was a long, agonizing pause as the warship drifted in the shadow of the alien behemoth. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the hum of damaged systems struggling to maintain power. Then, slowly, the alien ship's light dimmed. Its aggressive stance softened, and the massive vessel began to reposition itself, moving away from the human warship, creating distance but not retreating. It was as if it was observing, waiting for something more. Just as the humans began to relax, believing they had avoided conflict, new contacts appeared on the scanners. More ships, human this time, emerging from subspace in a tactical formation. Reinforcements had arrived, unaware of the delicate situation. The newcomers opened fire immediately, launching a brutal assault on the alien vessel. The crew of the first warship watched in horror as their attempts at communication were undone in seconds. The alien ship retaliated with unimaginable force, tearing through the reinforcements as if they were paper. The young officer, desperate to prevent a full-scale war, took matters into her own hands. Without orders, she hacked into the warship's communication system, broadcasting the decoded alien patterns to the entire fleet, hoping to stop the carnage. But it was too late. The damage had been done. The alien vessel unleashed its full power, and the space around them erupted into chaos. The human fleet, unprepared for the sheer scale of the aliens' weaponry, was decimated. In the aftermath of the battle, the surviving crew of the original warship could only watch as the alien ship vanished into the depths of space, leaving nothing but wreckage and silence in its wake. The young officer, hailed as a hero by some and a traitor by others, was left to grapple with the consequences of her actions. The message had been clear. The galaxy was far more dangerous and far more complex than they had ever imagined. In the silence that followed, as they limped back toward human-controlled space, the crew could only wonder what they had truly encountered and what kind of war they had just unleashed. The warship limped through the vast emptiness of space, its hull scorched and systems barely holding together. Survivors moved like ghosts through the dimly lit corridors, their faces pale with the weight of what they had just witnessed. Repairs were slow. The damage had been severe, and many systems were still offline. The atmosphere on the ship was thick with a mixture of relief and dread. Relief that they had survived the encounter, but dread about what awaited them next. No one knew if the alien vessel would return, or if others of its kind were out there, lurking in the darkness. The captain called for an emergency meeting with the senior officers and key crew members, including the young officer who had deciphered the alien signal. She sat quietly at the edge of the room, feeling the eyes of the others on her. Some glared with resentment, others with curiosity. Her bold actions had likely prevented their immediate destruction, but had also exposed them to a terrifying new threat. It was unclear how they would proceed. The captain, battle-worn and calculating, stood at the head of the table, his face a mask of grim determination. "We are officially out of options," he began, his voice low and steady. "Command is still cut off. The fleet's destroyed and we're on our own. What we do next will define whether humanity survives this or perishes." The debate that followed was heated. Some officers demanded they return to human space immediately, warn their superiors of the alien menace, and prepare for an all-out war. Others argued that retreating without understanding what they were up against would be disastrous, especially if the alien species had no real intention of fighting in the first place. The memory of the alien ship pulling back, seemingly reacting to their attempts at communication, weighed heavily on everyone's minds. The young officer, still shaken but resolute, finally spoke up. "We need to try again. We don't know their motives. They reacted to the reinforcements, not to us. We were making progress." Her words hung in the air, but the room remained tense. Could they afford another attempt? The risks were enormous, but so were the unknowns. Was this alien force an enemy, or had the humans provoked something far worse than they intended? The captain rubbed his temples, clearly wrestling with the enormity of the decision. Finally, he sighed, looking around at the crew. "We'll try to re-establish contact," he said, his voice heavy with the burden of command. "But if they respond with force, we'll be ready. Prepare the ship for any scenario." As preparations got underway, the ship's crew worked in a strange silence, a shared understanding that they were about to step into the unknown once again. The young officer and a small team worked tirelessly in the communication chamber, refining the message they had sent before. They studied every fragment of the alien signal, trying to uncover patterns, intentions, anything that could give them an advantage. Hours passed. The void outside the ship seemed deeper than ever, an oppressive silence pressing down on the crew as they waited for what felt like an inevitable confrontation. Then, just as hope began to fray at the edges, something stirred on the sensors. A single blip, faint but unmistakable, appeared on the edge of their range. The alien vessel, or perhaps another like it, was returning. The ship braced for impact. Weapon systems came online, shields powered up, and every hand on board was ready for the worst. But this time, the alien craft didn't engage. It hovered just outside the warship's range, as if observing, waiting. The young officer, her heart pounding in her chest, sent the message. For several agonizing moments, there was nothing. The alien ship hung in space like a predator eyeing its prey. Then, the ship's systems flickered, and the bridge lit up with energy signatures they had seen once before. The alien vessel responded, this time in a clearer, more deliberate pattern. The young officer's fingers flew across the controls, deciphering the complex signals as they poured in. The patterns resolved into something more than just communication. They were coordinates. The crew exchanged glances, uncertain. The coordinates pointed to a distant sector of space, far beyond any known human territory. It was an invitation, or perhaps a command. The debate began anew. Some of the crew were terrified, warning that this could be a trap, that the alien vessel might be leading them into an ambush or worse. But others, including the young officer, argued that they had already crossed a line. Whatever this species was, they had been misunderstood from the beginning. If they ignored this opportunity, it might lead to outright war. In the end, the captain made the decision, with little choice left, and fearing the consequences of further missteps, he ordered the ship to follow the aliens' lead. The journey to the coordinates was long and tense. As they traveled, the crew prepared for anything, an attack, a first contact meeting, or even their own destruction. The closer they came to the destination, the more they began to sense the magnitude of what lay ahead. When they arrived, what they saw defied belief. A massive structure, larger than any space station or planet they had ever encountered, hung suspended in the void. It was ancient, its surface glowing faintly with the same energy signature as the alien vessel. Around it, smaller ships, alien and unknown, drifted like guardians, watching them closely. This was no battlefield. It was a gathering, a meeting place of unimaginable scale. The alien vessel transmitted another signal, this time simpler, clearer. It was not a threat, but an offer of diplomacy. The captain, with the young officer by his side, prepared to make the most important decision of his life. They could open communications and attempt peaceful contact, or they could turn back, report their findings, and prepare for the war that might come if the offer of peace was rejected. With a deep breath, the captain gave the order. The warship sent its signal, and for the first time, humans and aliens spoke, not through weapons but through understanding. The communication sent by the human warship hung in the air, the seconds stretching into an eternity. On the bridge, everyone watched their screens, the tension unbearable as they waited for a response. The massive alien structure loomed ahead, silent and inscrutable, while the smaller ships hovered like sentinels around it. Then, the alien vessel responded, not with words, but with an invitation. A signal pulsed from their ship, activating something in the enormous structure. A docking bay opened, vast enough to accommodate even the warship, and the coordinates they had been given adjusted to guide them inside. It was clear they were being asked to enter. The captain hesitated for only a moment before issuing the order. "Take us in," he said, his voice steady but filled with the gravity of what lay ahead. The crew obeyed, guiding the ship forward into the unknown. As the warship passed through the open bay, the massive doors closed behind them, sealing them inside the alien megastructure. The interior was awe-inspiring. Towering spires of strange, organic material reached up toward the ceiling, glowing faintly with the same energy signature that had powered the alien ship. It felt less like a docking station and more like entering the heart of a living being. Once docked, an airlock engaged, and the ship systems registered that the atmosphere inside the structure was breathable. A small team, led by the captain and the young officer who had deciphered the alien signal, prepared to disembark. Tensions ran high as they suited up, armed but hoping they wouldn't need to fight. The captain gave a quiet nod, and they stepped through the airlock into the alien structure. The first thing they noticed was the silence. The docking bay was massive, stretching out in all directions, but not a single soul seemed to be in sight. The air was still, charged with a strange energy that made the hair on the back of their necks stand up. As they moved cautiously forward, lights began to flicker on, illuminating a path ahead. The young officer felt something, a presence in the back of her mind, as though the structure itself was alive, watching, waiting. It wasn't hostile, but it wasn't welcoming either. It was as though they were being studied, just as they had studied the alien signals. As they continued deeper into the structure, a figure finally appeared. At first glance, it seemed humanoid, tall, elegant, draped in flowing, ethereal robes that shimmered in the soft light. But the closer they came, the clearer it became that this being was far from human. Its skin had an iridescent quality, and its eyes, deep and ancient, seemed to hold the weight of stars. The being raised a hand, and a wave of calm washed over the human team. The captain and his crew stopped, waiting. It spoke, not through sound but through thoughts, projected directly into their minds. The voice was gentle, but carried an undeniable authority. "We are the wardens of the vast," the alien's voice said in their minds. "We guard the balance of this galaxy. You came to us not by chance, but because your kind is at a crossroads." The young officer felt a connection with the being, as if it were reaching out specifically to her. Her deciphering of the alien signals had opened a bridge, one that the wardens had chosen to walk across. "You stand on the brink of war," the warden continued, "but we have seen enough of destruction. If your kind wishes to survive, you must learn. We have guided others before you. Some have thrived, others have fallen." The captain, wary but respectful, asked a question that weighed on everyone's mind. "What do you want from us?" The warden's eyes seemed to soften. "We want nothing but peace, but peace is not easily earned. You must prove yourselves worthy of it." The warden gestured, and in an instant, the walls of the structure shifted, revealing vast scenes from across the galaxy. Planets teeming with life, civilizations rising and falling, wars fought and won, alliances made and broken. It was clear that the wardens had been watching for eons, their influence subtle but ever present. "You are not the first to face this test," the warden said, "and you will not be the last. Your fate depends on the choices you make. If you seek war, you will find it. But if you seek understanding, you may yet save yourselves." The captain exchanged a glance with the young officer, realizing the gravity of the moment. The wardens were offering them a chance, not just to avoid war, but to shape the future of humanity. The path forward would not be easy. There were factions back home that would demand retribution, seek to exploit this new alien power, or dismiss the encounter as a threat. But the alternative was annihilation. The warden stepped back, and the images of the galaxy faded from view. "Go now," the voice said, "and remember what you have learned here. The choice is yours." The humans returned to their ship in silence, their minds heavy with the weight of the encounter. As the warship left the docking bay and re-entered the vastness of space, they knew they were different. They carried with them a knowledge that could reshape their future, a warning that if they pursued war, they would surely find it. But if they sought peace, they had allies among the stars. The captain, standing at the helm, turned to the young officer. "We have a lot of work to do," he said quietly. She nodded, understanding the task ahead. The galaxy had become far more complicated than they had ever imagined, but they had been given a chance to navigate it wisely. As the warship set course back toward human space, there was a renewed sense of purpose among the crew. They had survived an encounter with the unknown, and now it was up to them to determine what came next, not just for their ship, but for all of humanity. They weren't just soldiers anymore. They were messengers, and the message they carried was one that could either save their species or doom it to extinction. The stars, once again, stretched out endlessly before them, full of possibilities and dangers. But for the first time, the crew felt a cautious hope. The war could still be avoided. Peace, if they were brave enough to seek it, was within their grasp.